light the first candle to honor Christianity. God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. We light the second candle to honor Judaism. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai deal kindly and gracefully with you. May Adonai bestow favor upon you and grant you peace. We light the third candle in honor of Buddhism. What ultimately matters is how we view the things we have. Do we use our wealth to build up egos and feed into our sense of entitlement, or do we share its benefits and the positive advances it can bring? We light the fourth candle to honor Taoism. If you understand others, you are smart. If you understand yourself, you are illuminated. If you overcome others, you are powerful. If you overcome yourself, you have strength. If you know how to be satisfied, you are rich. We light the fifth candle to honor Hinduism. If you approach the ocean with a cup, you can only take away a cup. If you approach it with a bucket, you can take away a bucket full. We light the sixth candle to honor Sikhism. The three keys to success and the spirit are: know who you are, allow everything to come to you, share it with others. We light the final candle to honor Lakota spirituality. Whatever you do in life, do the very best you can, with both your heart and mind. If you do it that way, the power of the universe will come to your assistance. If you truly join your heart and mind as one, then whatever you ask for, that's the way it's going to be. Spirituality in action. November theme is money and soul. Money is like water. This is by Lynn Twist. Grounded in sufficiency, money's movement into and out of our lives feels natural. We can see that flow as healthy and true and allow that movement instead of being anxious about it. We can experience fulfillment in directing the flow towards our highest ideals and commitments. So if you could just now take these words into that sacred place for a few minutes of contemplation with me. So how good it is to be in that overflow of spirit, that overflow of life and energy and power and presence that is unlimited potentiality. It is living from that place of wholeness, living from that place of truth, living from that place of oneness. We are interconnected at such a deep level that there is absolutely no way to be separate from God. It is imbued and ingrained and interwoven into the tapestry of our own being every day, all the time. We live in that place of the Most High, in that perfect unification with Spirit. And so I know that that same energy that is moving through us, as us, and around us is orchestrating this divine service with Reverend Cece's message to our band and to the children's church and to every single congregant and people who are here and not here, and to our community and to this world and to this planet. And so I know that all is good, all is ordained and blessed in this time together. And I give such thanks. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And together we say, and so it is.
So before we say anything more, take a big breath with me and let it out. Now just observe your next couple of breaths. Just take note of them. That was easy, right? I'll explain in a minute. You know, last week we opened up this topic of living in sufficiency, and I pointed out how we unknowingly chant this mantra that says, I don't have enough. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough. Whatever it is, we don't have enough of. And I don't think anybody in our society, you know, was born thinking, I have enough of everything. Unfortunately, we were taught just the opposite. You know, not enough love, not enough friends, not enough, not enough, not enough. And so I suggested that when we find ourselves chanting that mantra, we should stop and take a breath and remind ourselves that right there in the moment of that breath, we have everything we need, right? Everything is sufficient right there. And I invited you to join me in spending a few minutes contemplating on a daily basis the sufficiency of your life. You know, I like to do that before I get out of bed because I don't think there's anything that feels better than waking up in a nice cozy bed with lots of blankets and my two fabulous dogs smushed up against me, keeping me warm. I just stop and realize that I have everything I need in that moment. I'm married to a good man. I have great family members. I have a home I love. I have wonderful work. I have lovely friends and colleagues. I have sufficient food, sufficient clothing, sufficient gasoline, sufficient money to pay my bills. And so I just lie there and bask in the sufficiency of my life in that moment and allow myself to feel grateful for it. And then I get up happy, right? It makes us happy to do that little practice. So I want to dive a little deeper today into this idea of sufficiency and to changing the way we live toward and in and about and around money, because it is a huge deal in our lives. It's a big deal for us. Many of us, and it's going to take us a while to shift our viewpoint into that, out of the I'm not enough and I don't have enough, into seeing our lives in a framework of sufficiency. I think it takes a fair amount of practice to move the way our minds are put together into that framework. But here's what happens when we do. When we can ground ourselves in sufficiency, when we can see our lives as sufficient, we get a really deep spiritual realization. You know, we come to know that the source of, by whatever name you call it, whether it's God or cosmos or the universal intelligence or whatever you call it, is our source too. That source is infinite, and we start to trust that a little bit. We start to trust it a little bit. Because when we're living from not enough, you know, we tend to grab onto everything. And we think we're responsible for making sure that there is enough in every moment. And we view ourselves as limited because we somehow can't meet this weird idea we have of what enough is. We think we don't have enough, and grabbing onto it doesn't relieve any of the feelings of not enoughness. It doesn't. It just makes them worse. When we're not when we are in not enough mode, we've forgotten who we are, right? We've forgotten where we stand in the universe. We imagine that it's all up to us and that we're out here all alone and that we're responsible for getting enough to make ourselves feel okay. And of course, as I've said a couple of times, in that mode there's never enough. There will never be enough. But when we live kind of aware of this flow, this sufficiency that flows into our lives, then we can remember who we are. That we're integral parts of this thing called cosmos. That we're made from it and by it, and we belong here, and that we have a direct link to the source of all things. There was a Unity minister named Eric Butterworth. He's pretty well known. He had a giant place in New York for a while, and he wrote several books, including one called In the Flow of Life. And in that book he said, you're not created outside the universe. You're an integral part of it, a dynamic center within it. The allness of the universe is forever moving into and through the eachness that you are. And this creative flow has produced you. You belong to it, and in a more vital sense than it belongs to you. You are its expression. The free flow of substance within you is the continuation of the divine effort that made you in the first place. I love that. I love that. The flow of substance within you is a continuation of the divine effort that made you in the first place. See, that's the awareness I'm talking about, an awareness that we're sufficient because we're part of this infinite whole, and that's what the mystics have been trying to tell us since forever. One of the earliest known Greek philosophers, pre-Socratic, he was about, 500 years before the Common Era, so that was a long time ago. And he was trying to sum up his theory of the universe, and he said, everything rivers, or everything flows. His name was Heraclitus. And what he meant was, there is nothing in the universe that's not in flow all the time. Always, always. And 2,000 years before that, which is a really long time ago, Lao Tse, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, wrote, the human spirit has its source in the cosmic flow. Even as rivers have their source in some far-off spring or fountain. To find one's fountain, he said, is to learn the secret of heaven and earth. To find one's fountain. And so, you know, when an explorer sets out to find out where a river comes from, she starts where she is, at the water, and follows upstream, right? Until she finds the place its wells forth from the earth. Whether that's a spring, or a well, or whatever, or a fountain, whatever it is. And we have to kind of do the same thing to find our own fountain. We have to trace the flow of life within itself to its source, which is at the very center of our being. And it flows from the universe right into us, right there, and out and through us and out. And then we begin to catch a glimpse of our true nature, of our real nature. We understand that within each of us is this fountain of life, right? The fountain where cosmos, the divine, gushes forth. And when we're aware of it, how could we not be sufficient? How could we not have sufficient everything? If we're in a place, life itself flows in and through, we're kind of plugged into everything that is. Eric Butterworth actually in his book defines prosperity itself as the consciousness of the flow of life itself into and through our lives. The consciousness of the flow of substance and good and energy into and through our lives. So prosperity is the awareness of remembering who we really are. And Ernest Holmes said, I think in a radio program, he said, once we become conscious of that, we become dispensing stations for the good of the universe, right? When we let it in and through, we start like carrying it wherever we go and handing it out. Love and companionship and smiles and joy and a material good in everything that we are. When we become conscious of the flow. When we don't, when we refuse to become conscious of that, when the flow sort of backs up in us, we become like a stagnant backwater where things kind of die and it smells funny. You know, those are kind of our choices because, as Heraclitus said, everything flows. Everything in the universe is made of energy and ideas and love and things that flow, even money. And none of those things do any good if they don't flow, right? If life doesn't flow through you, trouble will ensue. If water doesn't flow through the riverbed, trouble will ensue. when we're conscious of everything that flows through us, that's how our good comes to us. It comes into us, we use it, and we don't hold on to it. We let it go. And then we start to trust that flow. We start to trust that it's going to keep going, and we find ourselves grounded in sufficiency. That is the view that gives us that grounding. We trust that the flow won't stop because the universe doesn't stop. What is it, the first or the second law of thermodynamics? That energy and matter are never lost. They just keep flowing, right? From the edge of the cosmos all the way here and back, and continuously all the time. So in her book, The Soul of Money, Lynn Twist wrote today's reading, grounded in sufficiency. I think this is the same as the reading. I don't know. Grounded in sufficiency, money's movement into and out of our lives feels natural. We can see that flow as healthy and true and allow that movement instead of being anxious about it. We can experience fulfillment in directing the flow toward our highest ideals and commitments. Then she tells a story from her own life, which I really appreciated. When her first grandchild was born, it was a little girl, and she was popping with visions of endless pink rompers and cute little ruffly dresses that were all pink, and just this, it was the granddaughter to dress, and she was so excited. And so a few months after the child was born, she had outgrown the newborn clothes, and it was time to go shopping. And so she had invited her daughter-in-law and the baby and her other daughter to come, and they would all go into San Francisco on this shopping spree. And she was just like hyperventilating. She was so excited. Pink bunnies and pink dresses and pink booties. And the night before they were going to go, her son called up. And he said, "Mom, I want to talk to you about the values that my wife and I hold. We spend our money and we buy things that align with our values." And so that, of course, meant no sweatshop, no child labor, no toxic dyes, no techniques in manufacturing that were environmentally harmful. And then he said, "Please buy only what she needs, because we don't want to start a pattern of excess, of expecting excess." And then he gave the name of a few stores where she could find this stuff. And at first Lynn was shocked. Like her big pink bubble just went, right? But then she stopped to remember that she was a social activist herself, and most of the shopping she did was not buying stuff that was environmentally harmful or that exploited people or that caused degradation of anyone's way of life. And she realized that in this vision of pinkness, she had fallen into an old trap of thinking. More is better, and she's not going to have enough if I don't buy a whole potload of stuff. So on their shopping trip, she and her daughter and daughter-in-law read labels and asked questions and found things that were perfect. And they bought exactly the right amount of clothing for this little girl to wear for her next few months. Because in a few months, guess what? She's going to outgrow them again, right? And she wrote, "It was very satisfying to direct the flow of my money and invest it with my own values, allocating it to people and places I felt good about." It's a wonderful illustration because, when we spend and contribute in accordance with our own values, the sense of flow becomes obvious, right? It becomes very obvious, and our sense of sufficiency increases, and our lives are lighter, and we know we're caring for ourselves and for our community. I mean, it's as simple as the power. If you can afford it, to choose, to get part of your power from renewable resources, or to recycle your plastic jugs, or to buy stuff they actually sell laundry soap now in cardboard containers that will decompose. Just little things like that. And that's what she's kind of talking about here, is to make sure that you are doing things in accordance with your values whenever possible. And so we start to feel the flow of that when we start to become conscious that it exists, and we begin to trust it. as life and energy and good stuff and money flow into and through us. And you know, we direct it where we can, and we spend it where we, you know, to keep ourselves going, and we receive in response to that spending. I don't know about you, but if I just paid my power bill and never got light, I'd be ticked off. But I always get light, right? I pay my fuel bill and I get heat. I pay my gas bill and I'm able to drive my car. There is a flow. It's giving and receiving and receiving and giving. It's a constant flow, like breath. It never stops. And we don't have to go out and hunt for our breath. We don't take a breath and then wonder if there's going to be air for the next breath. We just breathe. We just breathe, right? We trust that when we next inhale, air will be there. And we trust that every exhale will be followed by an inhale, and every inhale by an exhale. And that's the flow that I think if we were all more conscious of, we would live greater lives. We would live in more ease and less stress and strain. Because when we let anything flow through us, when we let love flow through us from the source into us and then out, we start bringing love to the world. When we let joy flow into us from the source and through us and then out into the world, we start to bring joy into the world. When we inhale our air and let it out, you know, the trees light up, and in turn they give to us from their own breath. This is what happens, not just for us, but for people around us. So right now I want to do a little short meditation practice that I invite you to add to your practice to help us all to embody this flow. So just sit quietly and close your eyes if you desire to do so. And breathe. You know, take a couple of good deep breaths and really feel it. And then as your breathing returns to its normal pattern, just put your attention on the breath as it enters and leaves. And enters and leaves. Constant flow in and out like the tide. And now imagine you can see the air as it travels through your nostrils and down into your lungs and way out into the tiny, tiny, tiny little tubules within your lungs. The ones that lie right next to the blood vessels. And imagine you can watch that flow down to the ends of the smallest tubules in your lungs and then back out again. And now imagine you can actually see the oxygen molecules move from those lung tubules into your bloodstream, which is completely working in concert with your lungs. And imagine you can see those oxygen molecules continue to flow through your body. And they hop off where they're needed. They jump off where they're needed. The blood continues to flow continuously. And it returns eventually to the lungs where it picks up some more oxygen molecules. Then to the heart, and then spreads out through the body, dropping off molecules of oxygen wherever they're needed, picking up carbon dioxide and bringing it back to the lungs in a never-ending flow. The flow of the breath meets the flow of the blood perfectly. And you don't need to do anything. You don't have to work to breathe. You don't have to work to make your blood flow. It just keeps doing its distribution flawlessly and effortlessly. Just observe that for a moment or two. experience the ease of it. Notice how much you trust it. Know that the breath will come in and the blood will pick up what it needs and circulate it. And the heart will pump the blood back to where it belongs, and on and on and on. Now imagine you see your whole life unfolding this same way. The energy of the divine flows into you, right at the center of your being, and flows outward into your whole being, sustaining you. And then it flows on. Flows from you through your thoughts and your words and your ideas and your touch and your smile and your actions. Flawlessly and effortlessly, life just continues to flow. Now begin to come back to this room and this moment, bringing back with you that sense of ease and flow and grace and effortlessness. And know that this is how everything is. Everything flows. The flow of life brings to you what you need, what you handle, use effortlessly and flawlessly. And then let go of it as it flows from you to bless the whole world.